Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my top 5 moments from the Square Enix E3 2019 press conference. If you guys want to check out my Microsoft moments, that was actually a longer top 10 list. You guys can check that out. I'll have a link in the description. It will also just be at the end of the video. If you guys want to kind of just wait till the end. Actually, it'll only be at the end of the video. I don't know. I said there was going to be a link. There won't be a link. It'll just be at the end of this one. But getting through this one, I was surprised how much I enjoyed the Square Enix press conference. For me, Square Enix doesn't really have a ton of stuff that I really enjoy, but they did have some stuff in here where I was like, okay, they basically had like some big things where it was just like, that's super freaking cool, and that's pretty much all that really matters. So for me, it wasn't like the top tier. They had some great stuff. Like overall, as a press conference, they did phenomenal. But I know for me personally, it was just like, yeah, I'm not as interested in a lot of stuff. So it was just like, okay, it was just kind of cool, minus the really big moments that they had. So starting right from number 5 for me, it was actually the Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC. I didn't expect them to have that. I haven't played 3, so I didn't know that there was supposed to be a continuation. So that caught me off guard. I was like, oh crap, there's Kingdom Hearts 3 DLC. So there's really not much to it outside of I know I'm going to get to play more Kingdom Hearts 3 when I eventually get to that. So I was excited for that just because I was like, oh, it's not officially over. There's still more to that story, which as long and crazy as that story is, it's still exciting to be like, oh, it's not over yet. So even though I'm not even caught up or 100% sure what the story even is anymore, I thought that was super cool. So that was nice. That's why it was my number 5. It just kind of caught me off guard, and I was like, nice. I still love Kingdom Hearts. It's gonna take me a minute to really get there to 3, but I was excited for that. So that just instantly like hit number 5 for me because I was like, that's just cool. So moving on from that, we have number 4, which if I remember, if I'm pronouncing it right, based on what I'm reading, Oninaki. That should be the name, Oninaki. August 22nd. It seems cool. It seems like a pseudo top-down hack and slash beat 'em up type game. But I'm curious about the story. It seems like they call them by different names, but I think the game is basically about people who are like Grim Reapers, sort of. Like you're like a Grim Reaper, but you also help people pass on and basically reincarnate. And I was like, that just seems really odd and interesting. But it also seems like you play like a buttload of characters, but they're like, this is the story of one of these people. And I was like, well, it's about one person, but you get like they're basically like the twins who had like a crazy shoot 'em up moment. You got a person that had like a giant sword, and they were doing like drop down dash attacks, and it just seemed like there were a bunch of different characters, and it could have been only like a couple, but they have different costumes. But considering the game itself and just most JRPGs or Japanese games in general, because it's not an RPG, typically it's not one character switching costumes. It's just a bunch of different stylized characters. So I was like, all right, it's about one person, but you still get to play as multiple people, and it seems like it'll be a fun sort of hack and slash game, and it seems like it'll have an oddly entertaining story, like just a weird story where it's about people that are, like I said, they're kind of like Grim Reapers, like they're helping people like pass on and pseudo reincarnate and weird stuff like that. So it caught my attention for the story as well as just like the simple hack and slash action, which does look entertaining. And based on the two characters being together, maybe it's co-op. Maybe that's just those two characters. They have a different mechanic where you control them both at the same time, which I think would be very cool. And that could just be how they go throughout the story, that they're siblings and they're just teamed up all the time. So that would be interesting to see. But either way, the combat looked pretty cool, and like I said, the story kind of caught my interest as well. So I'm definitely excited for that one. Moving on from Oninaki, number 3 is probably going to be most people's number 1, if not number 2, and that's actually Final Fantasy VII. They kicked things off very well, showing that off. Like, first off, we got to see Tifa. That was the most important thing. That's all that really mattered in my universe. I want to see Yuffie, because Yuffie I still like more than Tifa. I just like Yuffie. But we got to see Tifa. We got to see her fight as well. They don't just show her in the cinematic. We see her fight. We also see Aerith fight. So we see more magic. We see more of the hand-to-hand stuff. Actually, we see magic in general because they didn't have that in that first trailer. So we get to see magic get used. We get to see full-on hand-to-hand combat with Tifa. We get to see a couple of extra elements of magic being used by Cloud because he actually has the gem inside of his sword. We get to see basically a full-on boss battle with Cloud and Barret, and we see them switching. We see some more of the mechanics of the combat, because I thought for sure, even from the last trailer, it seemed like, okay, you can probably tell people like, hey, I want you to do this move and that move, but in this we actually get to see that when you do like a certain slash, you get to go into like basically full-on RPG mode, and I thought that was great. It reminded me a little bit of Knights of the Old Republic, where you can choose to pause it, but technically you don't have to. Like it sends you in the slow motion. It's like, okay, I got these 3 officers. I want to do this, this, and this, and I'll do this move to this officer. So it has that element of sort of real-time combat, but you get a specific move in. And I don't know if it was every move. I couldn't really tell based on how they were doing it, because I was like, is it every move you get to choose, or is it certain moves? So maybe it's every single move you can choose, but it would be pointless to do that every single time, because depending on the move, it won't be filled up as soon as you do a second slash. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Like if every move goes into slow motion, so you can react, or you can basically automatically pause it. But it seemed like it was when you get a hit, that's when it goes into slow motion, and then you can choose your next couple of steps and switch characters and or give commands. So I thought that was cool, because I was like, okay, I thought it was just full on real time combat, maybe bark out a few orders, sort of Kingdom Hearts style, where it was just like strictly that, but it does slow down, and it basically gives you a much closer feel to that old school turn-based strategy. So I was like, oh, that's kind of awesome. Where it's I would say it's probably a perfect blend of both. Like you get the normal hack and slash stuff from real-time combat, but then you go into that slow motion. It's like, all right, let me go into this menu, this, and this. I'll do these moves. I'll have Barrett do that move. I'll have Tifa do this and that. I was like, that's really cool. So I like that element. I thought it was a really good blend of those two different styles and kind of putting them together. And it allows for people who love that type of combat, especially with it being Final Fantasy VII. That's kind of what you would expect, to have your classic turn-based strategy. So I thought that was cool. I thought it was like the perfect way to blend those two together. You have the moves, then it hits you in the slow motion mode, and then you get to choose like old school, back and forth style. So I thought that was really cool. Seeing them do the combat against the boss is pretty fun. Seeing all the different mechanics, we get to see Sephiroth, so of course that's super sweet. But yeah, I thought it was really good. And for me personally, I'm still excited for the game. But I'm not like most people, I'm not insanely excited. It's not like the biggest thing in the universe. It was still insane when they first announced that it was actually even happening. But for me, it's like, okay, I'm still excited for it. I'm looking forward to seeing exactly how long this first episode is going to be, because that's my main thing. I can tell you right now, I'm not a big enough fan to buy it episodically. And I'm just not gonna do it. I didn't do it for Resident Evil, and they only did it once. Thank goodness, because I don't I would hope that they don't do that ever again. But when Revelations 2 was a thing, I was like, I'm just not gonna do it. Like I just knew myself. I was just like, I just can't justify. Like it's just a personal thing. I just can't justify doing it, buying a game per episode. Like I didn't do it for the Telltale games. I didn't do it for. And Resident Evil is legitimately my favorite franchise, and I was like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna wait till it's done and just avoid spoilers. I think it might be a little bit harder to avoid spoilers when it comes to Final Fantasy VII, because admittedly people weren't waiting like 8 million years for that game to come back. Like Revelations 2 was just the next Resident Evil game, so it wasn't on the same level of like we waited 3 decades, crazy stuff like that. It feels like it's been 8 decades, and like that game came out when I was a kid. But yeah, so for me it's just like I know personally I'm just not gonna get it episodic. Although they do say it's like there's so much freaking content. I think they mentioned it was like an insane amount of content just for the first episode. So if it does hit a certain point where people are like, yeah, this is like 8 hours and stuff like that, I might pick it up if that's the case. Because 8 hours is decent. Like people say that that's like super tiny and stuff, because we have games that are just like bombastic at this point. But no, 8 hours is good. And odds are they still won't be doing, it's not going to be $60 per thing, but who knows? It's hard to tell. Like that's one of the big things. I was like, all right. Once he said that, I was like, well, how in the world is what's the marketing gonna be for this? What's the price range? When he's like, yeah, we have so much content. I'm like, well, are they gonna be like super awesome and make it a lot cheaper, but still a buttload of content? Is it gonna be more expensive, but still episodic? Like, are we gonna be paying like $30, for an episode, which may or may not be worth it, depending on if it's like 8 hours or if it's if it's 12 hours? Then sure, that's totally worth $30. But it's just like, all right, well, we'll just have to wait and see on that. But I'm very curious. I'm actually kind of excited just to see how they decide to go about it, considering what they've already put into the game and what we should be expecting, down the line as far as it's being episodic. And I could be wrong, but I don't think they've announced, I don't think there's been any announcement as far as how many episodes there's going to be. But it's like, all right, once again, it's just hard to tell when he says we have so much content just on this one thing. And it's like, well, dang, what's that going to end up being? Like, how's that going to play out? Are we going to be getting physical episodes? Like, you can buy one, episode 1 of Final Fantasy, like old school style, where it's like you're buying like 3 discs for one game. It's like crazy stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see. And admittedly, we haven't, it hasn't been that long since that's happened. If anyone's played, I want to say the game was called like Lost Odyssey on like 360, and that game has like 6 or 7 discs. It's in the worst packaging in the known galaxy. Like it's legitimately just a regular Xbox 360 case, and then the rest of the games, the rest of the CDs are just in like little white cases that you would buy yourself. Like not even cases, just the white paper thing with the clear plastic so you can see what it is. That's what they did, and it was like 6 discs long for that game Lost Odyssey. You can look it up. I remember that on X Play for some reason. They showed it, and I was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. They didn't even try. It was like, just make a big case or something. Like, you're the one who put it on 6 discs. Put the effort in. Make a case that fits 6 discs. Don't just put one disc in the case. And it's just like, here's 4 or 5 other discs. And they're just in like classic white paper with plastic on the front. That's just sad. That's effort. But we shall see what happens. I think Square Enix will do a bit more than that. But it was interesting. It was definitely some cool footage to see, and I'm definitely looking forward to. And of course, we got a release date, which was technically before the conference. My friend had mentioned that to me, like the day before they did theirs, even. So I was like, "Oh, well, that's cool." So we'll be seeing it next year, episode 1. But I am looking forward to it. I just know myself; it's not, it's just not that big thing for me, like it is for pretty much everybody else. But I am excited for it, so that's why it's kind of like right there, number 3. But moving on to number 2, actually a new IP. And the reason that this one caught my interest more like Final Fantasy VII is actually due to the fact that it's done by People Can Fly Games, and that is Outriders. I think it was Outriders. Yeah, Outriders. And People Can Fly are the people that made Bulletstorm. They made Gears of War Judgment. I never played that, so I don't care about that. But I love Bulletstorm. I love the crap out of that game, and I still want a sequel. And I was hoping that when they did like the HD remaster and all that stuff, I was like, man, maybe they're doing that because they're kind of pushing for a sequel because the game ends on a cliffhanger, unfortunately. And I just don't think it's going to happen. But I love what they do. And all I could think was, if it's basically based on the full-on CG trailer, which was kind of the big thing this year, just like cool cinematics. But based on that really cool cinematic-looking trailer, if it's like the hell version of Bulletstorm, I'm totally fine with that. Crazy shoot 'em up game, demons and stuff. Plus there were superpowers, like they showed it at one point where the woman basically seems to like shoot fire from her hands. And I was like, okay, if it's Bulletstorm plus creepy horror hellish elements, pseudo Doom style, plus superpowers, I feel like that can't go wrong. For me personally, I feel like that's the type of game I want. I just assume in my head it's gonna be first person, but that's only because I got the Bulletstorm thing, even though they did Gears Judgment. So it'll be interesting to see. I would assume, actually, now that I think about it, with it being Magic and seemingly 3-player co-op style, they probably won't have it be first person. It'll probably be third-person view, so that way you can see people a little bit better. But, I mean, there are a million games that are first-person team-based, so who knows? I would love for it to be third-person. I prefer third-person just because you get to see more of the world all at once. I love a lot of visuals, but that's just my thing, getting to see the character and stuff like that, little animation things. But it caught my attention. I was super excited. I love Bulletstorm. I feel like they'll do a good game, and that's why it's my number 2. It just really caught my attention, and it was just like, I think I want this game. Even though, once again, full on CG trailer, but if you have to go concept-wise, caught my attention personally. I love Bulletstorm. That's really all I needed. I don't think it'll be anything like Bulletstorm comedy-wise, because that game is ridiculous, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. We get 3 characters. I would assume 3-player co-op. So we'll see how it ends up panning out. But I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Hopefully we get some actual content from it sometime soon. Gameplay in any way, shape, or form. That would be nice. Stills of gameplay, even. Concept art. Like, this is how Magic looks. This is some semblance of the story, even. Because that's, for me personally, story's always been the big thing. I'm a big story person, so I would love to know what's going on. What is this giant door that they seem to be opening at like 2 or 3 different points in the trailer? Stuff like that. Are they going to hell? Are they trying to get to heaven? Are they on Earth? And like the apocalypse has happened. This giant door is the gate to heaven. Weird stuff like that. Million ideas in my head. That door is so loud to close. Million ideas in my head. So we'll see what happens. But Outriders seems cool. I trust People Can Fly Games, admittedly solely based on the fact that I love Bulletstorm. It's just a fun, over-the-top game. If you haven't played Bulletstorm, pick up the remake. It's really great. You can also, I don't remember if that was a pre-order or DLC. It's probably cheap and on sale now anyway, but they have DLC where John St. John, the voice of Duke Nukem, literally reads every line of the main character in the game. You get a Duke Nukem skin, and he goes through as Duke Nukem. Like, it's him literally reading the lines. Like, I thought it was just going to be a skin, which is like, oh, that's interesting. They literally had this guy come in and do voice work where he voices every single line in the game as the main character. So that's something you just never see, where they're just like, we're going to remaster this and just have another person do the voice for a additional, like, unlockable main character. And that's cool. He does it as the voice of Duke Nukem. I don't know if they threw in extra lines for him or if it's literally just the actual dialogue, word for word from the original script. But it kind of fits because they say some crazy stuff in that game. I'm like, that fits Duke Nukem anyway. But either way, you should definitely pick it up or at least look up some gameplay because Bulletstorm is super fun. But moving on from the new IP and potentially great new IP, we have, of course, it's obvious if I haven't mentioned it yet, you already know what number one is going to be. And I hate to be super generic, but it's the Avengers. It's the Avengers. I liked it. I thought it was cool. I like it. That's all I can really say. It's like, I love the Avengers. I love comic books. It looks fun. Aside from just the fact that it's comic book based, it looks like it'll be entertaining. I'm on the same train as everybody else where it's like, it's super funny how close they're trying to be to like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where it's like, clearly this is based on the movie versions of these characters, but they can't use the actual actors' likenesses. So it makes it super funny, especially with like Bruce Banner, because I'm like, he's literally got like the button-up shirt with the sleeves rolled up and the glasses. I like that they gave him a purple shirt because it was like, oh, he's got the purple shirt instead of purple pants. So I like that, like the little nerdy reference there. But it does look good. I'm super excited for it. It seems like the way it's gonna go, you have all this co-op. They're tightening it up. Like the stuff that they said seemed really good for like any game in general. They're like, yeah, we're gonna have tons of content coming down the line as the game is kind of just out there to the world. We're gonna be doing like new rosters. We're gonna have new Avengers, new characters coming in. I'm like, okay, are we just gonna have the game plus new skins? Or new, even if it's fully new characters with different moves. Like if they throw in Spider-Man and he's got like brand new moves, is it going to be the exact same story and they say the same stuff? Like there's so many questions I had for that where they're like, yeah, we're going to be having that. So is it like, this is just you pay $60, you get the main story, but then they keep adding new characters. They'd have to add new stories. And I talked to some of my friends and they mentioned like, well, if they're doing it that way, it basically comes off as like a Destiny type situation where you have your base game, you have your main story, and I assume this would be a bit more linear than Destiny, even though I've never played it, but I think it's a bit open. And then they add continuous stories, but there's so much to add. Like, where do you stop when it comes to a comic book universe? So that was my big question, because I was like, by the end of this, with considering what they could do, it's basically like the super story driven version of Marvel Ultimate Alliance, which is coming out very soon. So I'm like, all right, how is that going to work with them adding more characters? Are you stuck to these characters have this specific story set? The characters are out, because I think the point is that they're doing like the East Coast Avengers thing, which is why they're like out, in California and stuff like that. So I was like, all right, do you have you have characters in New York? Are we going to get like full on craziness where now that Disney has officially everybody, are we going to see Fantastic Four? Are we going to see the X-Men? Are we going to see, I don't think we'll see the Inhumans, but who are we going to see? What are we going to get? What heroes, what villains? They had Hank Pym at the end there where he uses like a gun to shrink some stuff. It was funny because I saw him and I was like, who is this character? And then he calls him Hank, and I was like, oh, it's Hank Pym. But the jacket he had made me think of the movies, and it made me think of Star-Lord because he had like this burgundy jacket on, and I was like, that makes me think of Guardians of the Galaxy. So there are a million questions. I'm just like, where do they go with everything they seem to be kind of putting forward for this? So that had me excited in itself, like just outside of what we already saw, which I hope there's more gameplay to see. I hope that there's a video I can find on YouTube this week to see more about it. But it's like, man, what are we going to get going forward? Like, I'm already excited for the base game. The characters, I assume, are going to play drastically different because you get two characters who can fly. You got Hulk, you got Cap, and then you have Black Widow. You don't have Hawkeye. Very curious about that, but they got Hank Pym in there. So you got characters that do very different things, but they're close proximity, different elements for what you do. Different characters have their different moves, do this, do that. So you can replay a level like 5 times, and you have a different experience every time. And then, like I said, that leads into what happens when you have new characters come in. Can you just swap those characters out? Like, just boom, I'm switching out Iron Man for Spider-Man, stuff like that. Are they going to be delegated specifically to their own story modes? Are they going to do actual new story modes, or is it just new characters in the same story? So there's like a million questions. Would they have the voice actors redo the lines, for the new characters? So many questions, because I'm like, they say all this stuff, but that's a lot of work. And I'm curious how hard they're going to really push for it, and how well the game does in general will kind of determine that. Because if the game flops, they aren't going to do any of that stuff where it's like, yeah, we're going to do all this it's going to be Anthem. That's what it's going to be. If this game flops, it'll be Anthem, where it's like, yeah, we're going to do this and this and this, and we're going to have all these other characters, all this other story, and nobody buys the game. And it's like, well, we don't have the money to do this, this, and this, and all these other characters and all these other stories. So I'm sure it'll sell fine. It's Avengers. But I am curious what they do with it. But it is still my number one, because it seems like it's going to be a really fun and story-driven game. I love a good story-driven game, and if you do a good comic book story, which you may have seen recently, not recent if you've seen Dark Phoenix, but slightly recently before that, you can have some really good stuff. You do a good comic book story. So we'll see what happens with it, but that was my number one moment. I'd heard a bit about it. I didn't think they were actually going to show that much, because I heard, it's like, oh, they're going to show something. I thought it would be like a little bit. They showed more than I thought, less than I wanted, because there was a lot of time spent on it, but not a lot of actual gameplay footage, which was kind of funny. So I got to see more than I expected, less than I would have wanted, because I would have preferred that it was just more gameplay. Like when they showed the cinematic where it's like, here's a sneak peek, and they literally show like 3 extra lines from the same scene that they had in front of like Captain America's statue. I was like, that was dumb. Like it was legitimately, I was like, that seemed dumb. They added like 2 extra lines. Like nobody would have cared if that wasn't there. So that was really weird that they did that. Like here's some extra content, and it was like three extra lines. Like it's dramatic. You've never seen this before. It's Nolan North and Troy Baker. You've never seen that before. And I was like, why'd they do that? What was that for? But I still loved it, so I'm still super excited for it. But those are my top 5 moments from the Square. I was about to say Squaresoft. Wow. The Square Enix E3 2019 press conference. Of course, I would love to know your favorite moments. What games got you most excited? What was your least favorite moment in the whole thing? Across the board, E3 was a lot of CG trailers. I know people are upset about that, but you get a good trailer out there, especially if I trust the company behind it. I'm still good on it. So Outsiders is good. Just a random sneak peek into some other stuff. Deathloop at the Bethesda thing. I'm excited for that. I trust Arcane. I love Dishonored, so I'm sure that'll be fine. But yeah, I think that Square had a good conference this year for sure. Excited for a lot of different things. So much money to spend. But like I said, would love to know what you guys thought about the Square Enix press conference. Like I said, your favorite things, least favorite things. What are your thoughts on Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy VIII Remake? I know that excited some people. But what are your thoughts on Final Fantasy VII? Like, how in the world is that going to play out? If they got that much content per episode, what's the pricing going to be? Like, that's where my head is right now. It's like, what is the pricing if they put so much work into it? Are we going to end up spending like $300 by the time we get to the end of Final Fantasy VII, the remake? But at the same time, if it's like 12 hours a piece per episode, it makes sense, because that's what we would pay. It's the $60 for any normal game that's only 12 hours. It's like, yeah, but it would be so weird to have that where it's like, this is 12 hours, but it's only episode 1 of a full game. And it's just like, man, I'm so excited. I'm just so curious. How is that going to work in today's kind of gaming world? If they have that much content, what are they going to do price-wise? So that's where I'm at. I'm in like this weird economic thing. Like, how's that going to play out? I want to see it. So I'm excited for that next year. But we'd love to know what you guys thought about the conference as a whole, your favorite moments. So please put them down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.